Good morning, everyone. I'm actually quite happy to be here. But when I walked in this morning, I was like, Tommy told me I was talking to students. And then I saw some of the established lawyers in the space. And I'm like, am I going to be able to bamboozle these ones today? But again, I'm very happy to be here. I'm quite honored to be speaking again at the Oando Legal Seminar. And quite excited to be speaking to the next generation of lawyers, judges, policymakers, reformers, and I dare say, maybe even founders. I'm not happy that people from Unilag are not here. And that's usually the problem. The people that live the nearest to the school are the ones that come late. Because if the guys that are outside Lagos are here, then Lasso and Unilag, they have no excuse. And I'm going to try and, speak with you and not speak at you, because you guys sit at lectures ever so often, and your lecturers just, kind of load you with all that information. But I'm going to try and make the practice of law interesting. We're seeing less and less people wanting to, play where we play. So I'm going to try and not make this a boring lecture. Next slide. During the course of my presentation, I'm going to take you through a brief outline, which I'll be very bold to say was given to me by the CLO and her team. You would see that there's a part where I'm supposed to talk about the energy sector. You can't do that in 45 minutes. You can't do it in 2 days. So I'm going to try. So I'm going to try and speak to everyone listening to me about the real world of what legal practice in Nigeria looks like. Lawyers as business and commercial partners, and not just your straight-jacketed, go to court lawyers. I'm going to also speak about, a day in my life as a lawyer and how to position yourself early. And now I'm speaking to the law students in our midst and any younger lawyers in the space. Next slide, please. When I was putting together the presentation, I knew that my profile was going to be flashed. But I wanted to also just, get everybody comfortable by telling you things about me that you will not see in a profile. I cook when I'm stressed. When you look at me like this, you probably think I can't cut onions. I cut it, and nothing happens. I love to stay indoors, and I binge on true life documentaries. I deeply and truly love being a Catholic woman. I love music, and I think curating fashion is actually a superpower. And something that is not here, because I know I'm most likely expected to share this, is the fact that I don't drive. I learned to drive, but I don't drive. And I do make mistakes. So forget all that plenty, over 25 years. We will get to that. Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to, ask the lawyers or the law students in the space. When you think about lawyers, what do you think, or who do you see a lawyer to be? I'm going to try and make this as interactive as I can. When you forget these fancy dressed people here, when you think about lawyers, how do you see us?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Asma from OAU, Obafemi Awolowo University. So when I think of a lawyer, I think of somebody that has a very good critical thinking skills, someone that is very meticulous about doing things.
Thank you so much. Meticulous, critical thinker. I think we should immediately ask you to be called to the bar, because you've just done my session for me. But when you go to a layman on the street, most people, when they hear lawyers, they just think of the courtroom. They think of wigs, they think of gowns. Not very many people think of us as people that sit in an office. As in, when I started my career as a young lawyer, when I'm in the office past 8, my mom will call me and say, has the court not closed? And I'm like, Mommy, it's not everybody that does litigation. So I'm going to actually try and show that law is actually beyond the courtroom. And I'm going to try and expand our thinking today, because you can use the law as a weapon or a shield, depending on how you want to play it. It's a key that opens several doors. It's a passport to the world and a platform that you can stand on and create whoever you want to be. Now, when you look at the slides, right, in Nigeria, two broad strokes. It's either you're an in-house lawyer or you are a lawyer like Stella that works in a law firm and we're termed external counsel, right? But I'm going to now then talk about legal practice as we know it, not the legal team in Rwanda, for instance. So in a law firm, there are three categories of law firms that you will find anywhere. There are the firms that are called sole proprietorships. It's one man. So you hear Stella, Duru, and co. That co is probably his cleaner. It doesn't include anybody else but him. Some of them actually have younger lawyers as well, but more often than not, it's actually one person doing certain specific kinds of work. They do smaller deals. You see them, they're the ones that you go and meet and ask to draft a will. You ask them to immediately, review an agreement for you. Some of them are the ones that just, once they're called to the bar, they're like, please, I don't want stress. I will just be incorporating companies until I die. And that's him keeping his revenue small, but doing what he loves. Then you have the next batch of category of law firms. They're called small and mid-sized partnerships. These are, law firms that have between 2 to 50 lawyers. They are more specialized. They do slightly bigger transactions, but they're still viewed as small in the Nigerian and international viewpoints. And then you have the large-sized partnerships that are between 50 and beyond lawyers. Those you usually will find a lot of partners. Like my firm, for instance, we're 17 partners, we're over 120 lawyers. So that would, in the jurisdiction of Nigeria, be seen as a large-sized partnership. But when you're going outside Nigeria, for instance, we would not fall as large, because there are law firms that have over 1,000 lawyers, have been in existence for 100 years, do more sophisticated deals than we're doing here. And so, but then in Nigeria, you would see that large-sized law firms are more structured, they do more complex deals, and that's where you start hearing, oh, they just closed the $100 billion transaction. It's usually those big law firms that do that. Next slide, please. Now, you would ask, what do we typically do in Nigerian law firms? So this is a laundry list of what you usually would find. I'd spoken about the fact that most people view lawyers as persons that go to court. So that's litigation. But litigation is not just court now, because we're talking about the 21st century lawyer. We're talking about alternative dispute resolution as well. So more often than not, it's not just to go and, disturb all the judges. Some judges actually tell you, go and mediate first and see whether you can resolve these issues before you come to us. And so that's ADR, under litigation. You would see corporate and commercial. Under corporate and commercial, you would find, review of routine contracts. You would find company secretarial matters under that header. You will find matters around corporate governance. You would have finance. Finance, you're talking loans, you're going to the bank. Mergers and acquisitions, similar to what happened with Rwanda acquiring NAOC, the Nigerian Ajip Oil Company. So that's an example of an M&A deal. You've got capital markets. So when you hear about securities, you hear about shares, you hear about initial public offerings, law firms would handle things like that. There's tax, there's intellectual property, there's maritime, there's real estate. There's technology. My brother here is going to speak about AI and where we're going, which is quite interesting, but also quite scary. And then you have competition and antitrust, as well as regulatory and compliance. Next slide, please. Now, for the in-house lawyers, Because certain persons will come out of law school and they would immediately say, I want to work in a bank, or I want to work in Oando. I'm sure most of you have taken down Tommy's name, and you probably start sending her some emails that you want to intern or you want to work here. But for most lawyers that will end up being fantastic in-house counsel, the charge is that try and do some work in a law firm before you go in-house. It allows you breadth with the kinds of transactions and deals that you see. So by the time you are now then settling down to specialize, then you can actually say you're a master of that subject. What we find is a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to go to court, so I'm not going to go to a law firm. Law firms don't only go to court. Some persons will say, oh, I don't want to do company secretarial work. But then, in-house, they are seen as the guardians of compliance. So you're running away from doing that in the law firm, but you come in and you sit in the company secretarial department in Oando, for instance. You'll be in charge of compliance. If you are in the legal advisory arm of the legal team, you will be in charge of the transactions. If there's the M&A, if there are issues around opinions on issues, even in an in-house setting, you would find persons that their focus is on litigation. If someone is suing Oando today, that's their brief. You'll find persons that are sitting with the company secretary of Oando, and they're in charge of board meetings, board committee meetings, and everything around compliance and regulatory. So everywhere depending on where you sit, whether in a law firm or as an in-house counsel, there are different things that you will do, because there is no endeavor in life that does not have, the law playing in the space. So what we've done here is to just give, a rundown of the typical institutions where you'll find in-house lawyers. So you have them in the banks, you have them in telecoms, you have them in real estate and logistics, construction companies, you have them in energy and natural resources like Oando, you have them in fast-moving consumer goods and manufacturing and retail. You also have lawyers that have decided that they want to be the police. So they will rather work with the regulators than work in a law firm or even work as an in-house counsel in a company. Next slide, please. So this basically just speaks to, clear differences between law firms and in-house counsel, or lawyers that work in law firms. So we are seen as external legal advisors. We work on several transactions at the same time, cutting across several industries. We typically are those that work very long hours, and I'm going to get there when I tell you about a day in my life. With in-house counsel, they are the exclusive legal support to the organization. They are the ones that help all the other departments in the business with risk management and compliance issues. They're integral to company operations, and they have a deep understanding of the company's business. Now, that last point is the clear difference between certain lawyers that work in law firms and in-house counsel. What we find and what we have seen over the years is that certain lawyers that work in law firms just believe, okay, the client has given me this, I open this case, or I check this text, and I will provide no one is actually thinking about the business of the client. So when they're actually trying to solve a problem, sometimes they come with very academic solutions, and in-house counsel find it difficult to work with lawyers like that can't even try to picture the kind of business they're doing and the kind of problem they're trying to solve. But the in-house counsel, they are already, in teams where they're talking to the commercial guys ever so often, to the technical guys. So the breadth of their own thinking is wider, and they're able to resolve issues and provide solutions that deal with the business as opposed to just giving them textbook responses. Next slide, please. Now, to the young lawyers, the opportunities are endless. And we're in a world where it's like every time we wake up, something new is happening. Even in the AI world, you will think that something you knew yesterday, and maybe you want to rush and say, okay, I'm now see how everybody started looking at crypto and thinking that that was the sexiest thing that had since happened, and in a few months, a new kind of thing has happened. So this is actually a very interesting time for lawyers, because we're seeing things that we've never even thought were possible. With AI, with digital finance, we're seeing innovations and technology and global markets that have, basically shrunk, the world, but expanded our vision and our thoughts. So there are more than enough opportunities for young lawyers now to be at the forefront of, pioneering setting innovations in law with respect to this new and expanding frontiers. So one key takeaway is no matter your passion, whether it's in writing, in advocacy, in negotiations, there is a place for you in the Nigerian legal profession. Next slide, please. So now, just trying to get your mind to a place where it should be. And as I go along, you would see why I'm speaking to this. A lot of young lawyers are more interested these days in, okay, where can I go to where they can pay me huge salary, or where I can quickly make money? The money will come. But you see, law goes beyond statutes and precedents. So you have to try. And the next couple of slides, you'll understand why I'm saying this. You have to try to not be academic in your outlook or in your thinking. It's not, they told us in law school that, what are those cases again? The one of the cockroach inside there, I can't remember, it's been 25 years. Cockroach inside Coke, Donna Hill, you see? Your CLO is on point. So setting people just think it's just to throw the cases at a problem. I want you guys to be the different. The fact that you attended this session change your mindset as to the kind of lawyer that you can be. And the truth is, you have to be valuable and let the client understand that their pain is your pain. So there's nothing that makes you a business partner to a client than you feeling what they're feeling. And you can only do that by understanding their business. To succeed, you must think like a business partner. What does this mean for this business? How am I going to help them improve their commercial strategy? If someone comes to you today and says, I'm thinking of acquiring Oando, are you going to say, yes, we'll just go to SEC, or we'll go to any of the regulators and we must get those approvals? Is it the right time? Are there things about Oando that the client should know? Have you diligenced this target? So you have to start thinking like a business owner and not just a lawyer. Next slide, please. Communication skills are non-negotiable. We are finding it very nightmarish interviewing young lawyers. As in, we sit down and the English they are speaking, the words that they are writing, and we're wondering what's going on. I know in your generation now, you guys like abbreviations, but you cannot use abbreviation to get a job. A lawyer is different, and it must show in how you communicate verbally and in writing. So you cannot even play with your communication skills. Your commercial awareness, I've spoken about that. Your ability to think ahead will put you in a place over and above your peers. Next slide, please. Now, these are some of the things that I wish I knew as a law student. Now, you guys see me here, and you think, oh, after 25 years, she looks nice. I look like you people. I was even very playful. As in, Tommy is here. We will play first, and then we'll eat suya before we'll now then settle and do the work. But you see, grades, what you finish with, will not guarantee your success. And I can stand here to speak about that because when you look at me, I'm sure most of you think I finished a 2-1, a first class. In Unilag, I finished a 2-2. I went to law school, I struggled, I prayed. I said, let me finish a 2-1. I finished a 2-2. But guess what I did? I said to myself that when I had not gotten the opportunity to work with a law firm like Banwa and Ighodalo, I was not going to play with it. Some of you focus so much on, I finished with a 2-2, so I know my village people have already started. There can never be anything. No. Forget the grades. When you finish school, you finish school. When you start working, it's a different kettle of fish, and you must be focused. Relationships matter. Networking is a skill, it's not a sin. I started off by saying I'm very happy and love the fact that I'm Catholic. But some of us would hold on to our religion or our faith as the reason not to progress. Now, no one is asking you to do things that are unethical. You're a lawyer. It's not done. But networking, you must network. Especially if you're an external counsel. Because how else are you going to get clients? If tomorrow Tommy says I should come and mix with the senior executives of Oando, I will now say that I'm going to church. As a Catholic, there's mass at 6 a.m. If the event is at 4, I will go for 6 a.m. mass. Do you understand? So you have to make those, be flexible and accommodating because that's the only way you're going to differentiate yourself. Your reputation starts now. And I'm quite happy with what I'm saying with the students that came here today. You're all well turned out. Shino that is taking my video over there, he works with me. And he'll be the first person to tell you that when we do our onboarding, I am that partner that handles what we call the BNI DNA. So I take our new recruits on dressing, comportment, and their general look. So your reputation starts now. One thing I tell my young lawyers is once you are a BNI staff, you're an ambassador. You are wearing our badge on your back. So we don't want to hear, especially in this era of social media, that somebody brushed you on Aolo Road, then you came out, removed slippers, held the person, no. From there, just be going home because we have fired you. So you are a different kind of person, right? So if someone brushes you, I'm not saying, yeah, you're human, you're going to be angry, but you be inside the car and say, your father, don't come out. Because tomorrow, somebody's going to take that video and put it up. And then everyone will say, oh, that's how BNI lawyers behave. So your reputation is very important. You must guard it very jealously. Communication skills are currency. You must understand business and numbers. A lot of lawyers are lawyers because they don't like numbers. But once your salary is short, you will know. Embrace numbers. Because most of the big ticket deals, have numbers in them. Humility and hunger separates great lawyers from average ones. You must be hungry. After 25 years, you think that, okay, I'm 50 next year. I should be thinking of retiring. It's a lie. It's a lie. Until I'm 70 or until God carries me, I'm here with you people, as in we're looking for those deals together. But in that, you must still also be humble. Don't come and say because you have bought one Range Rover now, you just splash water on somebody that you are who? And then consistency beats talent. In the course of my career, we have found people that finished with first class, held on to that as a badge of honor, which it is. But today, flashes of brilliance. Tomorrow, flashes of dumbness. What's going on? I would rather work with someone who finished with a third class, but is dedicated at improving themselves and growing year on year, than someone that finished a first class, and then today they are lazy. They will now put me inside trouble. Maybe I will now be like, oh, this person is a brain. Madam CLO will ask me to issue an opinion. I will now leave it for the person. Person's inconsistency will now send something that will now put Oando inside trouble. Oando will now not pay my fees. I don't play with those kind of things. Next slide, please. So, knowing the law is good, but understanding business is magic. I thought that was important to mention. Overview of the energy sector. How many of you students are doing oil and gas in school? 1, 2, 3, 4. Everybody here. Why didn't you bring people that did not do oil and gas? Well, I didn't do oil and gas in undergrad. And I'm going to try and take you through what we typically see in oil and gas and in the power sector. Next slide, please. So now, when you hear oil and gas, you probably have heard. That means I'm preaching to the choir because most of you already know this. There's the upstream, there's the midstream, there's the downstream. When you're speaking to the upstream, you're talking about the oil and gas assets, acreages, oil under the ground, gas still under the ground. When you start speaking about midstream, you're talking about processing. And then downstream, you're talking about retail and sales. Your petrol station is downstream. Refinery, downstream. Although, well, with the PIA now, we don't know where we are sitting. Midstream is basically processing what you've gotten from the upstream. So it's kind of in the middle between the upstream and the downstream. I'll take you through what our regulatory framework looks like, who our key regulators are, as well as the market players. Next slide, please. How am I doing for time, please? Okay, so when you're talking upstream, you're talking exploration and production. I think further down, I'll speak to what the different licenses or leases look like. Midstream, I'd already mentioned processing, so you see your NGLs. This is typically where you hear about hydrocarbons, so that's basically a combination of oil and gas. So it's in the midstream where you start to, separate those molecules, the gas from the oil, and then downstream you have your petrochemicals and you have your refineries as well. And you can see the power plant down there because it will be gas-fired. I will speak a bit more about that when we're talking about power. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned, in the upstream sector, you start hearing things like geology, seismic, appraisal wells, field development, drilling operations. Like I said, this one is, I can't break it down in 10 minutes. In the course of this, I will also show you the typical agreements that underpin what we do in the oil and gas sector. When you get to the midstream, you start to transport your hydrocarbons, you start to store them, you process and treat, you market. That's where you start speaking about pipelines and the management of same. And then downstream, you're refining what you've gotten from the upstream, petrochemical production, you're also retailing, you're exporting and importing refined products. So these are the typical key agreements you will find depending on the sector that you're providing legal support to. So you have the production sharing contract, the concession agreement, the risk service contract, the JOAs, the farmings. You can use like 2 days to just discuss that. Number one, the PSC, right? But typically, we see more JOAs, we see farmings. I'm sure a few of you have heard about marginal fields. So the farming agreements, the instruments that you use with respect to them. When you come to the midstream, if you remember what I had said about, trucking and all that, offtake, so you see the crude handling agreements, the offtake agreements, the gas transportation agreement, the pipeline construction contracts, that you would see when you're acting for a midstream player. In the downstream, you would have the refining or processing contracts, you will have the throughput or storage agreement, you have the diesel supply contract, everybody kind of knows about diesel, you have the marketing, and then you have the haulage contracts as well. Now, with each of these contracts, there are key provisions that you typically will see in these contracts that you must know. A lot of people kind of run away from this because a typical contract in the oil and gas industry, just the definitions alone can take you 20 to 25 pages. So people that can be lazy run away from it, but it's very interesting. Next slide, please. Now, very quickly, the Constitution is the foundation for holding of oil and gas assets in Nigeria. Right now, we actually have dual regime, one under the Petroleum Act and one under the Petroleum Industry Act. And the question is why? The Petroleum Act has been in existence since 1969. In 2021, over 20 years later, we finally got the Petroleum Industry Act. And for the first time, gas was dealt with separately than what had obtained before. Now, when we go further down, and I'm speaking to the regulators, I would speak very briefly on some of the instruments that you would see. Now, if you were a holder of an instrument called an oil mining lease, and you did not convert that to a petroleum mining lease before the time stipulated in the PIA, then you would remain subject to the Petroleum Act. So the persons who are under the regime of the PIA are those operators that took steps to do the conversion. That's why we kind of have, dual regime happening. The Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act is important. This is the legislation that had to be put in place to allow operators that we call independents, the Nigerians, play in the space where the international oil companies had historically always played. It's because of legislation like that that we have companies like Oando doing, achieving great strides in doing things that before, a few years back, we thought only the Exxons and the Shells could do. There's the Gas Transportation Network Code, there's the Oil Pipelines Act, and then there's the EIA. Because the oil and gas sector is one that is project-laden, it's important to know about the EIA Act because you can't carry on any project without going through the EIA assessment, and there's a regulator that polices that space and ensures that you get the requisite approval and certification to proceed before you actually start the project. Next slide, please. So these are the key regulators you'll find in the oil and gas sector. There's the Minister of Petroleum Resources. He has broad powers to grant the hydrocarbon licenses and leases. You have the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. We all call it the NUPRC. They are responsible for actually issuing these licenses for the upstream sector, and then they collaborate with the regulator for the midstream and downstream, which is the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, that's the NMDPRA, with respect to ensuring that the entire value chain is regulated and governed well. So the NMDPRA handles matters in the midstream and the downstream sectors. And of course, the NCDMB, that's the Nigerian Content Development Monitoring Board, that ensures that there's compliance with Nigerian content requirements. So for instance, in that law, it says that all of the legal work done in Nigeria should be done by Nigerian lawyers. We still see some international lawyers play in our space, but that was a key introduction that kind of helped Nigerian lawyers get into the rooms that ordinarily they won't have been able to participate in if we didn't have, provisions like this in the law. Next slide. These are your key players in the oil and gas space. You have the upstream, the international oil companies who are operators and JV partners with NMPC. They are contractors under the production sharing contract. They are also technical advisors and operators under contractual arrangements with a few indigenous companies. You have the NMPC, that's the National Oil Company. It's owned by the federal government. It's involved in the entire value chain of the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream. It has entered into joint ventures with IOCs and more recently with the Nigerian independents. And then, of course, there are license holders as well. We've got the indigenous companies, and then we've got the midstream and downstream companies as well, like the petroleum marketing companies and the crude oil and gas processing and distribution companies. Next slide. We're going into power. And this basically just gives a pictorial representation of what you see. Most of you probably only know much about the power transformers. High tension wire is what they call it. And then where your meters are. But this basically shows how electricity moves in Nigeria. It gets generated by the generation companies. It moves through the transmission lines to the distribution companies before it gets to our houses. And historically, we had a vertically integrated power utility. I'm sure a few of you here were not born when we used to shout, "Up NEPA." Did you people know Up NEPA? You guys knew PHCN, but you did not know NEPA. It's just that some people, when they're still shouting NEPA. But I'm sure, how many of you even asked what is NEPA? Okay. So there was NEPA, and then there was an unbundling because there were legacy issues with the sector. There were losses. People were bypassing meters. Collection of, payments for electricity generated was terrible. The entire sector was in a mess. So there was a need to now unbundle that huge entity called NEPA. And so there was a transition into another company called PHCN, Power Holding Company of Nigeria, before it was now then further broken down into, I believe, 6 generation companies, 11 distribution companies, and 1 transmission. Now, most of those generation and distribution companies have since been privatized. The only one that there was no privatization done was with respect to transmission, and there are political, reasons for that. But there was a concession with respect to managing that company. And we have since moved, next slide please, we have since moved from that to a more liberalized electricity market. And we have the Electricity Act to thank for that, because now for the first time, states can now they can now pass laws to cover the generation, the transmission, and the distribution of power within their states. This was not the case before now. So we're seeing a bit more traction in that space, with states actually doing what the federal had to do. It was too much for the federal. And so, breaking it into bite-sized regulation is kind of helping to liberalize the market. So in the Electricity Act, you see provisions that speak to the protection of investments. And of course, renewable energy has become quite topical. So you hear things around solar, wind, biomass, hydro, and geothermal. I will touch on that very briefly later on. Next slide. So now we've seen quite a few states, pass their own electricity laws, because I think at the time the Electricity Act was passed, maybe the federal didn't really think that the states could do it. But I think about 10, if I'm not mistaken, states have now passed their laws and created their own, or they are in the process of creating their own electricity markets. they've set up their own state regulators to regulate the generation and distribution of electricity within their states. And we think these are very interesting times for lawyers that actually play in that space. We've got the grid, the distribution and metering codes, and all these other host of regulations and guidelines that underpin the regulation of operations within the sector. As you can see, there's more than enough work for lawyers. These are the key regulators in the electricity market. There's the Federal Ministry of Power. There's NERC, who remains the regulator, pursuant to Section 33 of the EA, and they have charge with respect to issuing regulations and licenses for generation, transmission, trading, distribution, and system operations. I've spoken about states now being more frontal, so we have state electricity regulatory bodies. We also have the Nigeria Electricity Management Services Authority, NEMSA. This is the regulator that must enforce and monitor technical standards and specifications in the power sector so that, people are not, electrocuted ever so often. And then, of course, there's the transmission company of Nigeria PLC. Next slide. So the next couple of slides will kind of speak to what you typically will find a partner, a senior associate, an associate, or a trainee associate handling in a law firm. And you most likely have that also happening with in-house counsel as well. But they would not call their own team members this nomenclature. They'll probably be senior managers, I don't know what your really young legal officers will handle. Next slide, please. So this is a day in my life as a lawyer, but as a partner. It's not as a young lawyer. You cannot say you now come and do NYC in BNI. Then I'm looking for you. You now say you are in the gym. Because SD said she was in the gym between 7 o'clock and 8:30. It's not me. But this is me. This is my typical day. I wake up, I pray, I check my emails. Just be following there's a common thread here. 7 to 8, I go to the gym. I do what? I check my emails. 9:30 to 10:30, I get into the office. I do what? I check my emails. 10:30 to 7:30 p.m. Client calls, emails, review documents, meetings, advisory, opinions. 7:45 to 11 p.m. What's the first thing there? You can't say, because I've been in the office since 7 o'clock, your client is doing a cocktail, you are not there. You'll be there until 11 o'clock. And then sometimes I get home and I'm able to get to bed before midnight. But you would see that I kind of have this strategy of checking my emails ever so often. And the thing is, we are lawyers, but we're actually like doctors. And none of you will be happy if you send a message to your doctor that you cannot feel your heart, and they answer you the next day. So we are the doctors to our clients. So your eyes must always be like, okay, is my client okay? Is there an email I need to, while you're carrying something in the gym, you're quickly. Many times they said, Stella, carry it. I'm coming. You quickly respond. And that kind of helps you show off as being efficient, being available, and being the trusted business advisor or partner to that client. There's nothing a client hates more than trying to reach you and they can't find you. So this is a typical day for me, provided I'm not closing a deal. Tommy is here. There were days we slept in the office. Let me just say very quickly a very short story. There was one time I didn't go home for 5 days because we were closing a deal. And so my brother, who also worked on the island, would come every morning with a change of clothes. And then when we finally closed that deal, I went home, had a proper shower, slept, and then I was going back to the office, and my daddy said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the office." He said, "But you've been in the office since." I said, "I came here to bath." "Oh, you came to waste my own water because I don't know why you are here." But those are some of the things we had to do as young lawyers to be able to meet some really crazy deadlines for our clients. Next slide, please. So, as an associate, these are some of the things you'll be expected to do. At this point, you're managing deliverables, you're owning work streams, you are growing your confidence as a lawyer. So you are the first person, your first draft is going to make or mar what is going to go out. So if you think, oh, because you have like 3 or 4 people before you, you just do anything, not very good. We rely so much on the first drafts of our young lawyers because you guys are the ones nearer the newest legislation, at some point we can't read those things anymore. So you guys are the ones that will help us. You join client calls, you manage specific aspects of a deal under supervision of the senior associates. You learn from the comments you get, and then you help with coordination. Now, keynote, at this stage, you are developing your independence, you're starting to take ownership of tasks, and you are building a reputation for competence and reliability. Next slide, please. Senior associates, they're more senior, they're leading teams now, they're providing strategy, they're managing client relationships. They're actually like senior managers, and most of them are on partner track. Some of them will never make partner, but it's left to them to decide who they want to be. As a senior associate, you're expected to deal with an effectively balanced leadership, supervision, and strategic decision making. And the last one is the partner. We don't sleep. The salary must be complete. And yeah, you're that person that the clients will look for, and you must be available. Next slide. So, key takeaways for the future lawyer. Communication, I've mentioned that. Technology awareness, you cannot in this era say you don't know anything about technology. That's you doing yourself a disservice. You must be able to be flexible and adaptable. You must be commercial in your thinking. Think strategically. You are going to be negotiators and you're going to be problem solvers. So you must remain visible. You must practice confidence. You must show up well. You must smell well. You must look well. You must speak well. You must volunteer. You must intern. Next slide. Mistakes that you should not make. Don't burn bridges. The people that you are in school with today may be persons that will be your clients tomorrow. Keep those relationships going. Try and run away from having a very poor work ethic. Be the first in the room. Be the first to volunteer to do a task. Try and ensure you get mentored. And remain curious, because silence doesn't help anyone. And so, my closing message to the young, aspiring lawyers in the room: some of you will end up shaping policies. You would lead energy companies like Oando. You may sit as judges. You will negotiate billion-dollar naira global deals. My charge is walk through the doors with excellence, with courage, with purpose, and just remember, Nigeria and indeed Africa needs brilliant lawyers. And we would be looking forward, God keeping us, to welcoming you to the bar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Another round of applause for our speaker. At this juncture, we're going to entertain some questions. Sure, she has said a whole lot. I'm sure there are different things you would like to ask her. And this is that opportunity. So if you have any questions, just quickly signal and I will hand over the mic to you, okay? So you're the first.
Good morning. My name is Madeline. Thank you, Ma, for the amazing speech that you've given us. My name is Dabelu Modilim. I am a student at Afe Babalola University. And my question borders on, becoming the actual lawyer. You mentioned a lot about work ethic, communication, and it seems that the higher you go, the more work you have, the more that is on your shoulder. So my question really borders on the balance, work-life balance, especially the long days that you have or that you'd come to have regarding work. So is there a balance? Do you balance work and life, family time and all that?
There's really no balance. You just try your very best. Some fantastic, brilliant lawyers have had to leave legal practice to go in-house because they were trying to find this balance. But the thing is, it's not every time you're stretched. Even when you come in, like the CLO told me, she's one of my very close friends. Another one sits up there, Damola. And Damola normally will go to the gym, but today she was like, I have to leave early. I've got like back to back meetings. But that's not every day, right? What I would say to young lawyers is try. The first 5 years of your life, try and give as much as you can. I know with the younger generation, we're hearing this work-life balance more often than not. You will find that balance when you get older. And that's why I showed you a day in my life. As a young lawyer, I was obese, I was big. I did not find time. I was even happy to be eating the rice, but I was doing the work, right? Because I wanted to learn. This is your time to soak up. But you see that balance, you will have to drag it yourself. What I try to do now is maybe on a Saturday, I'll go get a massage. On Sunday, go to church, find somewhere to go and eat or something. But there's no real balance. It's for you to decide create your own balance. I guess that's what I'm going to say. It's not one size for everyone.
I think just from the family, because you also mentioned family time, especially as, you're young, maybe you have a young family at that time. I think getting a lot of support also helps. Like I had, I was here when I started Rwanda, I had my kids. I had a lot of help from my parents, just try and get as much help and outsource a lot of things. There are some things you don't have to do yourself because you are trying to build your career. Get as much help as you can because especially for women, it's a bit. I think it's sorry, men. I don't mean to sound.
No need to apologize.
But it can be tough on women, especially as if you have a young family. I mean, I have my colleagues here that have young children, and just try and get as much external help as much because unfortunately, it doesn't wait for you. Like the life moves on quickly, and you find yourself lagging behind if you don't find as much help as you can from your family, friends, outsourced help and all that. So I think that's what I've.
Thank you so much. I think I saw another hand here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Precious Abodjorin, a student of Olabisi Onabanjo University. So as someone that is in the digital world, how do I survive being in the legal world? For example, as a content writer, a social media manager, all those digital skills, how do I bring them into the legal world and be successful in it?
It's your people we are looking for, and I think my brother is going to speak to that. Because you, for instance, we are now we're actually as a firm doing an AI audit. Are we ready? What do we have in place to do all of that? You already have a head start. in the fact that you understand that digital world more than some of us. So you can actually provide that support wherever you find yourself. And of course, as a lawyer, you'll be the first person to even help with certain things like data and privacy and the contracts or the laws or the regulations that should underpin that space because of your knowledge of it.
All right, thank you. I saw one hand there. I'll get to you.
Yes, good morning, Ma.
Morning.
My name is Atera Sarah Olateju from Lagos State University. So yes, you mentioned something about mentorship series. We should learn to be mentored. So now my question is, what type of mentorship models do you think would work best for a junior counsel or a junior lawyer in a field where major senior partners or even partners are stretched thin across multiple projects? So what type of mentorship models do you think would work for that junior lawyer where partners are even engrossed in multiple projects and even partners are busy with other stuff?
So your mentor doesn't necessarily have to be someone you work with. It can be someone you admire from afar. You can, follow them on, pages like LinkedIn and see what they put out as thought leaders. Partners in law firms sometimes are stretched, but in my firm, for instance, there's an open door policy. So if you have a challenge, you have something you're struggling with, you can reach out to any of us and have a conversation. So what we find with younger people, not just younger lawyers, is that they think, mentorship must be structured in a particular way. No. You see how someone speaks. You see what they write. You see what they do. If you have an opportunity to meet up with them, you have a conversation with them, and that can change your entire worldview. So any opportunity you have, try and see what you can learn from them. And then, of course, if you go for internships, we have people coming to our firm doing internships. Some people will just sit in the space for 4 weeks. They don't talk to anyone. They do the work they're doing, and they go away. But when you have an opportunity like that, you should, have conversations with people, not just the partners, because not only partners that are mentors. Someone that is 2 or 3 years your senior at the bar can mentor you. So, it's not straitjacketed.
All right. One last hand here, and then we'll take the questions online.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
My name is Boluwatito, a student of Olabisi Obanjo University. So I have a quick question. In today's crowded legal market, how do you differentiate a valuable lawyer from just a qualified lawyer?
A valuable lawyer is one that makes my life easy. He's standing here, but I'm going to say that that's an example. Mr. Shino is an example of a valuable lawyer. Shino, remind me, you are 2 years at the bar? He's 2 years at the bar. But there are things that Shino will churn out that some of my senior associates will not churn out. So already we know that if Chino comes to my office and closes the door, I will tell him to open the door. Because when they do that, they're about to go. So Chino is not going anywhere. And told me, please, don't remember his name. It's not coming here. But a valuable lawyer is one that is available, flexible in thought, the quality of their first drafts, the ability to remind you that this client has not paid. Because you see, there's something about doing work and then forgetting that law is a business. He's quick on the take, as in his responsiveness is actually very admirable. He's also one that would remind you that we sent out this proposal, we haven't heard anything. So he has taken on the garb of a business owner, like he's a partner already. So a lot of young people coming and make it a job. You need to be passionate about what you do. Even if you're there for just 6 months or a year, when you are leaving, people must feel your absence. That's the difference.
That's lovely. Okay, so we have two questions online. They're quite similar, so I'm just going to merge them into one. So the question here is, good morning. As a law graduate, stroke student, interested in oil and gas, how do I start building myself for this practice? And then the other one added, considering I may also have interest in getting internships.
You should come straight now. You want to intern with us? We are open. Send your CV. But seriously, we like to have interns come in the room. And if you're thinking of actually starting a career as a lawyer in the oil and gas space, I would say, first and foremost, try and do everything general before you specialize. A lot of young lawyers make that mistake of just jumping in. So you now then find lawyers that are 10 years at the bar and they cannot draft a resolution. They don't understand CAMA. They cannot review routine agreements. Cut your teeth with routine agreements, review agreements, understand, because there's no oil and gas company that is not a company. So if you don't know CAMA, there's a problem. Make sure you go and sit with people that do company secretarial, sit at meetings of boards. There are quite a lot of things that you can, garner from sitting in those spaces. So don't just think, okay, I just want to start reading PSCs. No. If you don't know what an NDA looks like or what you should look out for in an NDA, you can't help me with a PSC. So let's be as generalistic as we can. First 2 years, do as many things in different areas of law before you now then say, I want to go this way. Like I said, I didn't do oil and gas in school. The first 3 years of my career, I was a litigator. I went to court. I did company secretarial. I think it was in my 5th year, I now then started doing some oil and gas stuff. But right now, there's nothing in CAMA, apart from this new CAMA now that they are trying to use to confuse us, that I didn't know. So, and that will actually get you ready to even be invited to sit on boards. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Please, I believe we can do better than that.